The NFL draft is almost complete, which means Best Ball Mania is about to drop. Let's go over some tips for Best Ball Mania. Welcome back to Finding Value Fantasy. We're going to be talking about 5 best ball tips, 5 Best Ball Mania tips for the upcoming draft season for 2024 NFL season. Let's do this. We're just going to go through 5 tips. Let's start with this one, super stacks. One of my favorite strategies to employ. So I like doing this just with teams that I feel are a little bit undervalued as a whole, where I could grab, a couple players like, start with the Patriots this year, where I can grab Drake May and I can grab Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, and then throw on Douglas or throw on Bourne, throw on Henry, throw on Ramondre. So you can grab maybe 3 or 4 of those guys with Drake May. I think that's a really fun way to stack the Patriots this year. And I think that's a way to kind of capture an undervalued team. If you want to look back to last year, you could see the Texans, the Packers, 2 teams that you could grab a ton of people late. Like you could grab Stroud, you can grab Dell, you can grab Noah Brown, Nico Collins, all pretty late in drafts, and they all would have paid off their draft capital with what their pricing was. And obviously you could do the same with Jordan Love, Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks was pretty good down the stretch too. So there's pairings of players, and you don't necessarily need the quarterback, because you could still stack a team that you feel is undervalued, like the Titans or the Seahawks, without the quarterback. It still kind of benefit from having those correlated players on your team, where it's like, okay, Seattle's rolling, I'm going to get all the points from Seattle scoring a lot of points. Or, the Commanders are rolling, I'm going to get all the points from Commanders rolling. So I think that's kind of a fun way to play it. You can obviously do the Jay Daniels stack with McLaurin, Dotson, Ben Sinnott, rookie. They got Luke McCaffrey, another rookie. So you can kind of play it that way. Obviously, I think tacking on a running back is always good. And just if you're attacking an offense, I think throwing a running back on there is always not a bad decision, just to make your bet on that team a little bit deeper. So those are some stacks I like. I think super stacking is a very good idea. You can even take it to the next level and be like, okay, I'm going to super stack 3 teams, and I'm going to get their quarterback for all 3 and just see what happens. Like maybe I land on 3 teams that are underpriced, and maybe that's the whole core of my team. Maybe 15 of my 18 players are that way, and then I have 3 one-off guys that might just be good pieces. Leaning into correlation is always a bad thing, especially if you end up making it to the finals. Obviously, it's a little thin, but you're kind of just you only have to get a few things right when you're like, okay, I need the Seahawks to be good, I need the Commanders to be good, I need the Titans to be good, or even if they're not good, I just need them to be offensively viable. So definitely a very good tip I like. I think super stacking is number 2 is a complicated one. It kind of involves a little more thinking, but I think it's still a good tip, is building your teams logically. And what that is to me is kind of allocating enough at every position and not overdoing it. So that means don't allocate too much at quarterback, don't allocate too much at tight end, too much at running back, too much at receiver. I think receiver is kind of the gray area where you can kind of go as much as you want, but it just depends. You kind of want to find the good balance, but I think a lot of people make mistakes where they go too heavy on running back, where they might grab 6 running backs and 4 of them are in the first 6 rounds. That's too much. I would argue if you're going to take 4 in the first 6 rounds, I think you just stop and don't take a single one after that. I think that's more than enough draft capital for a good running back room. And then you can kind of think of players as subtypes, where a player could be a part of your team, but he is the anchor of the team. Or, I have Breece Hall as my anchor running back, and I'm going to have 3 other guys that are kind of rookies. Maybe they're slower starters. And then maybe I have a couple more handcuffs later on, and you could kind of fill out your 2 running backs that way. Because on Best Ball Mania for Underdog, you only need 2 running backs in your starting lineup every week. You need 3 receivers, so receivers definitely more important already. And then ideally, you want your flex to be filled with a receiver too, because they have a higher ceiling. So you kind of want 4 of your spots to be filled with receiver most weeks, even though that's not necessarily going to happen. I kind of that's what I'm shooting for with my receiver rooms. I want 4 of them to be a part of my roster every week. So that's kind of what I want to do. I see people grabbing too many receivers sometimes. Sometimes they'll grab 6 in the first 5 rounds. and then they'll grab 5 more. Like that's too many as well, to an extent where you could be wasting picks later on players that might not even be a part of your roster or be important. It's nice to have the variety, but I think there's times where you can overstack receiver, which is surprising when, it's commonly said that you should grab as many as you can get. But I think people do swing too far in one direction where they might grab too many receivers. They might grab too many running backs instead of like kind of finding that nice sweet spot where they're like taking risk, but they're not taking on too much risk where it's almost like not smart to do. So come examples of some slow starters are Keaton Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks. So kind of what I would think with those guys or people that are hurt, people coming off injury, I think those players that could go on the pup, you kind of want to pair them with some guys like James Conner or Mostert, some guys that might play earlier in the season quite a bit, get a lot of volume. Maybe they get hurt. Maybe they just get phased out of the offense. Those are things happen a lot. If you look back, like Alexander Madison was a guy that got phased out of their offense a bit or got hurt. There's players that kind of fit that mold of player that might just they might play really well all season like Mostert did last year, but they could get hurt early. They could get phased out. James Conner missed like 4 games last year, but he was still great. So kind of one of those guys that you kind of expect to have good volume early. So my biggest lesson there is that if you grab 6 rookie running backs as your only running backs on your team, you may have a great team later, but early in the season, because you need to be building for week 1 through 17, and then obviously weighted towards the end mostly, you might be just so behind in the first 8 weeks because you have rookies that aren't really playing much. So you might just be completely dead already with how much of a hole you dug yourself with your running back room. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and just something really important is to kind of allocate your team based on who you're picking and even the type of player you're picking. So I think it's just like another level of strategy you can think about when you're building your teams. And tip number 3, this is literally my favorite, I think biggest edge in best ball is injury discounts. I think there's just so many situations that players are playing too scared. And I think that's just one of the biggest edges we can exploit. And I try to exploit, sometimes to my own detriment. Sometimes it works out really well. But I think it's just something that you can take advantage of to either get yourself a unique combo of players that are unattainable before the injury discount, or second of all, just get great values on players that you already like and just kind of lean into uncertainty and risk. So just kind of pay attention throughout the offseason, throughout the drafting season, where that players may get hurt. Maybe they knock hamstring injury, they get like a leg injury, a toe injury, if they get a concussion at practice. Obviously, some things are more serious than others, but I think just knowing that player might just go down a round in value, even if they get hurt in July, they might go down a round in value. That's big to me. I think that's like something I always want to buy those players then, if I'm going to buy them at all, or if I'm already like them, I might just keep on grabbing them. So I think that's something really important if you're going to try to get a diverse portfolio. I think grabbing of drafts, I think grabbing those, suspension risk guys, those injury scares, like Tua was a big discount last year and ended up smashing his ADP pretty well. In my opinion, last year he had a really good season. Definitely was worth his ADP, and obviously Hill was too. But there's just ambiguous injury situations like Cooper Kupp from last year, Jonathan Taylor from last year, 2023. You can kind of take advantage of those discounts that just kind of happen throughout the offseason. So just pay attention to those. Maybe you want to buy them. Maybe you don't like the player already and they get an injury discount. Maybe you grab a couple shares, or maybe you just don't want them at all. That's fine too. But I think my biggest word of advice and just my biggest edge, in my opinion, is just taking as many of those shots as I can on those risk players that maybe they miss a game or two. Maybe they don't miss any games. Maybe they go down on 2 rounds in value and I can take them 2 rounds later just because they got a random hamstring injury, right? So I think just leaning into the uncertainty is just well worth it to me. And something that will always be, in my opinion, always an edge right now. Just from people are just always going to play scared. I think people will always lead on the side of caution. Not always, but a lot of people will. And I think there's just always going to be people that will be too cautious and things like this. And we'll always get a little bit of a discount, if not a big discount. So my favorite tip there for sure is the injury discount. Tip number 4 is ADP is fake later in the draft. I think ADP is just completely fake if you're in like the last 4 or 5 rounds of the draft. I think of it as more of a comfort rating. So kind of think of like, oh, these players are more comfy than the people that go a little bit later. So that's kind of, and then people just keep clicking them. Oh, this guy's a little more comfortable. I don't feel good about clicking this guy. I'm going to click him instead. I think it's just like people feel a little more cozy, comfy clicking those guys that go a little bit earlier on the ADP number. And I think that's just a big mistake also, where sometimes like if you know someone's going to rise, you might want to take him over, a big reach. But I think a lot of the times there's just players that are all in the same tier, all that projected the same amount of points, projected similarly. They might not even play. They might play a lot. Like all those are very similar, like dart throw bets, where if I can get to round 14 and just starve 4 players I like that are late and just, or starve 6 players I like and just close the draft and just call it good, save yourself some time, I'm willing to do that. I think that's not a bad idea. And just so you can kind of disassociate with ADP and not worry about, oh, I'm so worried about this number of 20 picks of value that I'm going to miss out on. Just don't worry about that. Just grab the guys that you think make more sense. And if you were doing that last year, you could have ended up on a team like you could have ended up with a team with 4 late round picks, and your last 4 picks of your draft were Tank Dell, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, and Sam Laporta. Those could have been your last 4 picks of your draft. If you were doing this strategy, that could have been the reality. It would have probably been later. So Laporta might have been higher. So, there's definitely a window of time where you can grab all 4, but there's also windows of time where you can grab 3 of them easily in the last 3 rounds of your draft. And that's insane to think about given where their ADP is now. I mean, they're all within the first 5 rounds now. And you could get them in the last 4 rounds last year. So that's just a stark difference, and kind of just, in my opinion, a clear reason why you could just kind of take advantage of that and grab people later in the draft that are higher ADP. Maybe the number is higher, but it doesn't make a difference when that player is only there just because people are more comfortable clicking people lower. So I'm kind of trying to think of it as like, oh, this is a comfort click at the end of the draft. And instead of just clicking comfort, unless I really like the guy, I just would rather switch and just like, hey, I'm going to take a shot on this rookie that went in the 5th round of the NFL draft. I'm going to take a shot on this rookie that went in the 6th round of the NFL draft that isn't getting drafted a lot. Or I'm going to take a shot on this running back 2 that looks like he's emerging as the running back 2. Like, that's what I would rather do than to kind of worry about, taking something safe earlier. The 5th and final tip is drafting windows. I think this is a big deal, as when there's different windows throughout the offseason, maybe every couple of weeks, where there's different players that may be rising or falling for different reasons. And you can kind of take advantage of that, whether you want to fade them or buy them as they're rising or falling. So early post-draft stuff is pretty easy to identify, because I kind of just think about what are the best landing spots, who got there, who's landed there, what players are there, and who are the worst landing spots, what player fell in the draft, what player fell in the NFL draft. Kind of find some fallers that way too. So I think kind of use your own discretion about what you want to do, whether you want to fade or buy a player, whether you like them or not. Kind of do your own research and try to learn from other people, learn from your own research, and try to see who you like. I'm going to be buying Worthy as he rises to try to get some exposure to him, but as he goes in, maybe the 4th, 5th round he might get to, I might have to just pump the brakes on him and grab some other guys I like more. But I think there's just going to be a ton of rise action, and you shouldn't be afraid of like reaching 10 picks to grab Xavier Worthy, or reaching 20 picks to grab Xavier Worthy if you want him, because you know that people are going to reach for him and he's going to move up the draft board. So I'd rather take him 10 picks of ADP now than take him, 10 picks of ADP later when he's already 20 picks before where I was going to take him before. So it's like, it's going to keep rising. So if you want to take him, you got to take him, and you might have to reach a little bit, and just don't worry about that, because down the road throughout the offseason, he's going to be a higher price than that the whole time. So we got Coleman, Leggett, Pearsall, Ricky Pearsall, Caleb Williams, Worthy as risers. We got some faders, some fallers, Troy Franklin, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I think that Bears receiving core is going to fall a bit, especially Rome, just because his landing spot, he's got a lot of target competition. Franklin obviously fell in the draft big time. He ended up on the Broncos. Not a bad landing spot, but he did fall a lot. So probably not the best situation for him. He did get paired up with his former quarterback, so that is kind of fun, but I still think he'll fall a bit. And then obviously there's another window in training camp. When training camp comes around, there's a window there where we can buy camp hype or fade it. And last year there was a Calvin Ridley clip that went viral for 2023 and went viral. He was like running drills, looked pretty good. I mean, it looked really good, honestly. I was kind of scared of fading him, but I did fade him, worked out. Even when he rose an extra round, kept fading him. It was a good decision in the long run. So there'll be situations like that will come up where a player makes a crazy catch in practice or something like it. That'll just happen, and you have to decide what you want to do with those situations. But there will be risers and fallers, so more buying windows for players you like. And oftentimes I notice that if a player's getting no buzz, they'll just fall just because people are reaching on other guys that are getting a lot of hype. So that could be another buying window for you if you just see a player you like, but he's not getting talked about a lot, but he just keeps, you're like, no one's talking about him, but I like this guy, so I'm going to keep taking him as he falls. So another thing for sure there. Preseason, as the preseason comes around, Tank Dell emerged last year. He was a great piece, obviously, and he kind of had a great preseason, and then people were kind of fading him still, like, hey, he did it in the preseason, maybe he's not that good. He actually ended up being one of the best receivers late in drafts. And then there's running back 2 situations, stuff like the Rams. Puka Nacua ended up emerging there because you saw Sean McVay, the Rams head coach, sit Puka and Kyron, where you kind of knew, like, okay, these guys are important. Those guys are starters for him. So then Puka and Kyron were both right out of the gate big pieces of that offense as well. So I think zero RB becomes more viable later in the season too, where you can kind of just grab zero running back options that weren't available earlier or shouldn't have been available earlier. So throughout the offseason, you'll kind of get a better idea of what the depth charts look like, where like you'll know who the wide receiver 3 is on this offense, or you know who the running back 2 on this offense is, where before that there could be 3-4 guys in the running for that running back 2 slot, or even the running back 1 slot too. So I think thinking about that is really important, because last year there was guys like Malik Davis on the Dallas Cowboys, and then on the Vikings there was Dwayne McBride. I took a good amount of both of them. They both didn't play a snap. It ended up being Ty Chandler and Rico Dowdle. So if I kind of waited for that information to come to me a little bit faster, or a little bit, was more patient and waited, I could have ended up with none of those guys, and then ended up with a good amount of Rico and a good amount of Ty Chandler, which Ty Chandler ended up being a smash in the playoffs last year for week 16, 17, 18, or 15, 16, 17. So I think not only that, just building your teams with that in mind, that you want to have a good team the whole season, but the most important part of the season is the last 3 weeks. So always keep that in mind. I think that's extremely important. And then if you made it this far in the video, I'll just leave you with some last guys that I think are good scroll picks where you can grab in the last 3 rounds, last 4 rounds. Scroll the F down, as my friends at Badge Bros would say. Shout out to those guys. Those guys are awesome. Check them out if you haven't already. But some guys that I like late, where they might be rising and you could grab them in the last 4 rounds, I think we got Jalen McMillan, Isaac Guerrero, Javon Baker. We got Will Shipley, Jacob Cowing, Jermaine Burton, Anthony Gold, Luke McCaffrey. So that's just a kind of few that you can kind of like leave on, where you like, hey, I'm in the last 4 rounds of my draft. I'm just going to auto pick, star those 4 guys and kind of just go on to the next draft. So I wouldn't suggest auto picking and then or like starring and then leaving, but you could definitely do that. If you want to just click 6 guys and you don't care who they are, as long as they're, people that are going late after round 18, you just grab those guys and you're feeling good. You can also throw Ben Sinnott in there, Theo Johnson in there. Theo Johnson went to the Giants, got Ben Sinnott going to the Washington Commanders. So a couple of guys there that makes sense. It's like late round dart throws. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's helpful. Best of luck in Best Ball Mania 5. I hope that we have someone in this community that is close to me that, or maybe even watch this video, that ends up winning it all. Really excited for this season. Best of luck. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave a comment. Let me know some tips that you have. I would love to learn from what you guys have as well. And just super fun stuff. Good luck in Best Ball Mania this season. Good luck in all your best ball tournaments. Good luck in your NFL fandom, whatever you're doing. Just have fun and enjoy it. And best of luck. Know that you're going to make mistakes, but learn from them. And tune in to Finding Value Fantasy all off season long and all during the season. So Should be a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.